Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up, because today on Boss Economics World, we're diving headfirst into the latest economic dumpster fire courtesy of the US government. I'm your host, the guy who's here to rip the band-aid off the festering wound of bad policy, worse execution, and the kind of economic mismanagement that makes you wonder if the folks in charge have ever opened an Econ 101 textbook. Today's topic: the US Treasury's grand plan to lay off a substantial number of employees under the guise of government efficiency. Oh, and guess who's leading the charge? None other than Elon Musk, the self-proclaimed savior of, well, everything. Spoiler alert, this isn't about efficiency, it's about chaos, economic sabotage, and a government that's hell-bent on tanking the economy faster than you can say, recession. Now, if you're new here, let me give you the Boss Economics World guarantee: we're not here to sugarcoat the nonsense, we're not here to kiss the boots of the powers that be, and we're definitely not here to let the government's economic clownery slide by without a good old-fashioned roasting. So, grab your popcorn, folks. This is going to be a wild ride as we unpack the economic mess behind the Treasury's layoffs, expose the government's role in driving us toward a recession, and drop some hard-hitting data to back it all up. Let's go. First, let's start with the headlines, shall we? The US Treasury is planning to lay off a substantial number of employees as part of President Trump's executive order to implement the so-called Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE initiative. Yes, you heard that right, DOGE, because apparently, the government is taking economic policy inspiration from a cryptocurrency meme coin named after a Shiba Inu. Real confidence-inspiring stuff, folks. According to court filings, the Treasury, which employs over 100,000 people across bureaus like the IRS, the Bureau of the Fiscal Service, the U.S. Mint, and the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, is gearing up for what they call reductions in force, RIFs. Translation: mass layoffs, baby. Now, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is out here trying to sell us this steaming pile of nonsense by saying, oh, no, this isn't about elimination, it's about efficiency. Efficiency, my foot. If this is efficiency, then I'm a world-renowned astrophysicist. Let's call this what it is: a reckless, ideologically driven hack job on the public sector that's going to kneecap the very agencies responsible for keeping the US economy from imploding. And who's the mastermind behind this brilliant plan? Elon Musk, the guy who thinks firing half of Twitter's workforce is a model for economic success. Newsflash: Elon, running a government isn't like running a social media platform where you can just fire everyone and hope the bots keep the lights on. Alright, let's peel back the layers of this onion of incompetence and get to the real economic issues here. What happens when you lay off substantial numbers of federal employees, especially from critical agencies like the IRS? Well, for starters, you tank government revenue collection, disrupt public services, and send shockwaves through the labor market. Let's break this down step by step, shall we? The IRS, one of the Treasury's largest bureaus, is already understaffed and underfunded, thanks to years of budget cuts and political attacks. In 2023, the IRS had fewer than 80,000 employees, down from over 94,000 in 2010, according to the U.S. Government Accountability Office, GAO. Now, they're facing even more layoffs. Are you kidding me? The IRS is the agency responsible for collecting the taxes that fund, the entire government. In fiscal year 2023, the IRS collected $4.7 trillion in revenue, 96% of the federal government's total receipts, per the Treasury's own data. But here's the kicker: the IRS estimates that the U.S. loses $600 billion annually to tax evasion, a number that's only growing because, surprise, surprise, they don't have enough staff to audit high-income earners and corporations who are gaming the system. Now, let's do some basic math, folks. If you fire more IRS employees, you're going to collect even less revenue. The Congressional Budget Office, CBO, estimates that every dollar invested in IRS enforcement yields $5 to $9 in additional revenue. So, by slashing the IRS workforce, the government is effectively increasing the federal deficit, not reducing it. And let's not forget, the U.S. national debt is already sitting at a jaw-dropping $36 trillion as of November 2024, according to the U.S. debt clock. Brilliant move, guys. Let's make that number even bigger by gutting the agency that brings in the cash. This isn't efficiency, this is economic suicide. Now, let's zoom out and look at the broader economy. When you lay off tens of thousands of federal workers, you're not just cutting government jobs, you're throwing a Molotov cocktail into the labor market. These are middle-class workers, folks, people with mortgages, car payments, and kids to feed. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS, the unemployment rate in the U.S. was already ticking up to 4.2% in October 2024, with over 7 million people out of work. Now, add a substantial number of Treasury layoffs to the mix, and you're looking at a potential unemployment spike that could push us into recession territory faster than you can say, DOGE. And what happens when unemployment spikes? Consumer spending, the engine of the U.S. economy, takes a nosedive. Consumer spending accounts for 68% of U.S. GDP, per the Federal Reserve's 2023 data. When people lose their jobs, they stop spending on non-essentials, which means businesses suffer, leading to more layoffs, and voila, you've got yourself a full-blown economic death spiral. Just look at the Great Recession of 2008 to 2009, unemployment peaked at 10%, and consumer spending dropped by 3.2%, according to the BEA. Are we really going to repeat that disaster because some billionaire thought it'd be cool to disrupt the government? Let's not forget the other Treasury bureaus on the chopping block, like the U.S. Mint and the Bureau of the Fiscal Service. The Mint produces the nation's coinage, while the Fiscal Service manages federal payments, including Social Security checks, veterans benefits, and, oh, yeah, the interest payments on that $36 trillion national debt. If you think long lines at the DMV are bad, wait until you see what happens when these agencies are gutted. Delayed payments, botched coin production, and a government that can't even pay its own bills. Sounds like a recipe for economic collapse to me. And let's not ignore the human cost here. According to court filings, these layoffs are going to disproportionately affect probationary workers, people who've been in their jobs for less than 2 years. These are often younger workers, new entrants to the labor market, who are already struggling in an economy where inflation is eating away at their paychecks. The CPI inflation rate was 2.6% in October 2024, per the BLS, but core inflation, excluding food and energy, remains stubbornly high at 3.3%. Meanwhile, real wages, adjusted for inflation, have barely budged, growing just 0.8% year over year. So, not only are these workers getting fired, but they're also getting thrown into an economy where it's harder than ever to make ends meet. Nice one, Uncle Sam. Now, let's get to the heart of the matter. Why is this happening, and why should you be angry? This isn't just about layoffs, it's about a government that's so obsessed with ideological grandstanding that it's willing to sabotage the economy to score political points. The DOGE initiative, led by Elon Musk and rubber-stamped by President Trump, is the latest in a long line of reckless policies designed to shrink government without any regard for the consequences. This isn't about efficiency, it's about ideology. It's about a belief that government is inherently bad, that public servants are leeches, and that the private sector can magically fix everything. Spoiler alert, it can't. Let's look at the data, shall we? The U.S. government employs about 2.2 million civilian workers, per the Office of Personnel Management, OPM, and contrary to popular belief, the federal workforce has not been growing. In fact, it's smaller today than it was in the 1980s, when adjusted for population growth. Meanwhile, the private sector relies heavily on government services to function, think infrastructure, regulatory oversight, and, yes, tax collection. When you gut the government, you're not unleashing the private sector, you're crippling it. And let's talk about Elon Musk's role in this circus. This is the guy who laid off 50% of Twitter's workforce in 2022, leading to a platform riddled with bugs, outages, and a 44% drop in advertising revenue, per Bloomberg. Now, he's applying that same genius to the U.S. government. Are we really going to let a billionaire with a track record of chaos dictate economic policy? This isn't innovation, it's insanity. Folks, let me be crystal clear, we're already on the brink of a recession, and this DOGE nonsense is pouring gasoline on the fire. The yield curve, a classic recession indicator, has been inverted since mid-2022, with the 10-year Treasury yield falling below the 2-year yield, per Federal Reserve data. Historically, an inverted yield curve has predicted every recession since the 1950s, with a lag of 12 to 18 months. Well, guess what? We're 18 months in, and the warning lights are flashing red. Meanwhile, the Conference Board's leading economic index, LEI, which tracks indicators like manufacturing activity and consumer confidence, has been declining for 24 consecutive months as of October 2024. A decline of this length and magnitude has preceded every recession in the past 50 years. And now, the government wants to throw mass layoffs into the mix. This isn't just bad policy, it's economic malpractice. So, here's the Boss Economics World takeaway, folks. The U.S. government, under the leadership of President Trump and his billionaire buddy Elon Musk, is driving the economy off a cliff. These layoffs aren't about efficiency, they're about ideology, incompetence, and a complete disregard for the data. The Treasury's plan to gut its workforce will tank government revenue, spike unemployment, disrupt public services, and push us closer to a recession. And for what? To appease a billionaire who thinks government is just a big game of SimCity. If the government really cared about efficiency, they'd be investing in the IRS, not slashing it. They'd be modernizing public services, not dismantling them. And they'd be listening to economists, not entrepreneurs with a messiah complex. But no, instead, we get DOGE, a policy so dumb, it makes trickle-down economics look like rocket science. So, to our viewers, whether you're an everyday American worried about your finances or a finance professional trying to make sense of this madness, here's my advice: get loud, get angry, and demand better. Because if we don't, the clowns running the show are going to turn this economy into a smoking crater. And trust me, folks, we'll be here at Boss Economics World to call it out every step of the way. Until next time, keep fighting the good fight, and remember, the only thing more bankrupt than the government's policies is their common sense. See you in the comments.